The air smelled of roses and iron, of expensive cologne, and something older, dried blood. I was the only human in the room, gripping my champagne glass like it was the only thing keeping me upright. A year ago, I barely survived a monster's attack. Tonight, the most dangerous predator wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was right behind me, whispering my name in a voice that felt ancient. He said I was under his protection, but protection in his world came with a price. The truth. He wanted to see what I kept hidden beneath the silk scarf. What the council must never see. I thought showing him my scars would get me killed. I didn't know it would awaken a war that had slept for centuries, and that I was the spark it needed. I didn't belong among them. Not really. The solstice gala glittered around me, a kaleidoscope of wealth and power that made my skin crawl with every passing second. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls above us, casting prismatic light across faces that were too perfect, too still. I adjusted my silk scarf for the 100th time, feeling the weight of it against the tender skin of my neck. The champagne in my glass remained untouched, golden bubbles rising and dying in a cycle that mirrored my racing heartbeat. Up, then gone. Up, then gone. Stunning event, isn't it? A woman's voice floated beside me, her perfume heavy with jasmine and something metallic beneath. I nodded without meeting her eyes. Yes, lovely. My fingers tightened around the delicate stem of my glass until I feared it might snap. 3 weeks of preparation, of practicing smiles in mirrors and rehearsing small talk, and still I felt like prey in a room full of predators. The grand ballroom of the Rosa estate sprawled before me, a masterpiece of old-world opulence. Marble floors so polished they reflected the movements of the guests like a dark, still lake. Tapestries hung between arched windows that stretched toward a ceiling painted with scenes of ancient battles. Battles I recognized from history books, though the faces in the frescoes seemed oddly familiar. I took a single sip of champagne, wincing as the bubbles stung my dry throat. The liquid was cold, but it did nothing to cool the burning sensation beneath my scarf. The bite marks, no, the incident, as my therapist insisted I call it, throbbed in time with the string quartet playing in the corner. Violins and cellos creating music that sounded like weeping. Breathe, Eulalie, I whispered to myself, feeling the air catch in my lungs. Just breathe. But each breath carried the scent of roses and iron, of expensive cologne, and something older, something primal that made the fine hairs on my arms stand at attention. I hadn't wanted to come, but the invitation hadn't really been a request. Not when it bore the wax seal of the Rose family. Not when it arrived exactly 1 year after I'd survived what no human was meant to survive. Inciting incident. The crowd parted like a dark sea, and I felt him before I saw him. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees, raising goosebumps along my exposed arms. My heartbeat accelerated to a painful rhythm, and I pressed myself against a marble column, seeking its solid reassurance against my back. Cassian Rosa moved through his guests with the fluid grace of a predator who had no need to hurry. His platinum hair fell past his shoulders, catching the light with each deliberate step. He wore black, as they all did, but his suit seemed to absorb the surrounding light rather than reflect it. His presence commanded the room without effort. Conversations hushed, glasses paused mid-air, breathing slowed. I slipped my hand into my clutch, fingers finding the small vial of vervain oil that wouldn't save me, but offered the illusion of protection. The oil had stained the inside of my purse, and its bitter scent mingled with the leather, creating a small pocket of reality in this dreamlike nightmare. Miss Vane. The voice behind me nearly stopped my heart. I turned to find a waiter, his face a careful mask of servitude, offering a tray of blood-red appetizers that glistened under the chandelier light. "No," I said too quickly, stepping back and colliding with someone else. "Thank you, no." My hand flew to my neck, ensuring the scarf remained in place. "Careful there." Large hands steadied me, lingering a moment too long on my bare shoulders. I could feel the coolness of his skin through the thin fabric of my dress. We wouldn't want our guest of honor to fall. I didn't need to turn to know who stood behind me. The voice carried centuries in its timbre, a resonance that vibrated through my chest cavity and settled somewhere deep in my marrow. "Mr. Rosa," I managed, forcing myself to face him. "Thank you for the invitation." Cassian Rosa's amber eyes studied me with the patient interest of someone who had all of eternity to wait for an answer. They glowed faintly, not with the red hunger I remembered from that night, but with something equally dangerous: curiosity. "You're trembling," he observed, his head tilting slightly. A strand of platinum hair fell across his face, and he made no move to brush it away. "Are you cold, Miss Vane?" The question hung between us, layered with meaning. I was cold. I had been cold for a year, since the night I'd lost so much blood that the doctors had called my survival miraculous. "The marble," I lied, gesturing vaguely to the floor. "It holds the chill." His lips curved into the ghost of a smile. "Indeed it does. After 4 centuries one forgets how sensitive humans can be to temperature." The casual mention of his age made my stomach clench. 400 years. He had walked this earth while my ancestors were still being born, living, dying in cycles as predictable as the seasons. "Your scarf," he said, his gaze dropping to my neck. "Hermes, is it not? An interesting choice for midsummer." Rising action, my hand instinctively rose to touch the silk at my throat. The scarf had been carefully selected, thick enough to hide the scars, elegant enough to pass as a fashion choice rather than a shield. "I find air conditioning excessive in most venues," I said, the practiced excuse rolling off my tongue. But my voice betrayed me, cracking slightly on the last word. Cassian's nostrils flared subtly. Could he smell my fear, my blood beneath the layers of silk and perfume? The thought made me dizzy, and I reached for a nearby table to steady myself. "Walk with me, Miss Vane." It wasn't a request. His hand extended toward me, pale and perfect, unmarked by time or labor. I stared at it, remembering other hands, rough, cruel hands that had held me down in an alley while teeth tore into my neck. The memory flashed behind my eyes. Rain-slick pavement, the metallic scent of my own blood, a predatory growl that haunted my dreams. "I prefer to stay near the exits," I said, surprising myself with my honesty. Something flickered in Cassian's ancient eyes, respect perhaps, or amusement at my futile defiance. "A wise strategy in unfamiliar territory. But you are under my protection tonight, Eulalie Vane. No harm will come to you in my house." The use of my first name sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. It sounded different in his mouth, older somehow, as if he were pronouncing it the way it was meant to be spoken centuries ago. "Your protection," I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. Where was that protection a year ago when one of your kind decided I would make a suitable midnight snack? The words escaped before I could contain them, hanging in the air between us like a challenge. Around us, conversation stuttered to a halt. A crystal glass shattered somewhere to my left, the sound sharp and startling in the sudden silence. Cassian remained perfectly still, a statue carved from marble and moonlight. Only his eyes changed, the amber darkening to something molten and dangerous. "That," he said softly, each word precisely formed, "is exactly why you are here tonight, Miss Vane." He stepped closer, and despite my determination to stand my ground, I retreated until my back pressed against a cold window. Outside, the moon hung full and heavy in the sky, casting silver light across the immaculate gardens of the estate. "You survived," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "You were attacked by a rogue, drained nearly to death, and yet here you stand. Do you know how rare that is?" I swallowed hard, feeling the scars beneath my scarf pulse with phantom pain. "Lucky me. Luck had nothing to do with it." His gaze was penetrating now, as if he could see through skin and bone to the very essence of me. "You were left alive deliberately." Marked, claimed. My breath caught painfully in my chest. "I wasn't. I'm not claimed by anyone." The room seemed to contract around us, the other guests fading into shadows at the periphery of my vision. Only Cassian remained in sharp focus, his immortal face both beautiful and terrible in its intensity. "Then explain," he said, reaching slowly toward my neck, "why you bear the royal mark." I jerked away from his approaching hand, colliding with the waiter. A tray of glasses toppled, the crash explosive in the hushed room. Dark red liquid splashed across the marble floor. Wine, I told myself frantically. Just wine, spreading like a stain toward the hem of my dress. "The peak and cliffhanger, don't touch me," I gasped, aware that every eye in the room was now fixed upon us. My heart hammered against my ribs with such force I feared they might crack. "Please." Cassian remained unmoving, his hand still partially extended. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger at my defiance, but a deeper emotion I couldn't decipher. "The council requires proof," he said quietly. "They believe I've fabricated your existence to serve my own ends." From the shadows at the edges of the ballroom, figures emerged, older, their stillness more profound than even Cassian's. Their eyes reflected light like animals, gleaming red and gold and silver in the darkness. The Night Council, I realized with growing horror, the judges and executioners of vampire kind. "Show us the mark, human," commanded a voice ancient as dust. "Or we shall take it as evidence of Rosa's deception." My fingers clutched the scarf tighter, the silk now damp with my perspiration. The wounds beneath, two crescent punctures, surrounded by a pattern of smaller marks that formed an archaic symbol, burned as if freshly inflicted. "I can't," I whispered, though I knew they could all hear me perfectly. "I won't be your exhibit." Cassian stepped closer, his movement so swift I barely registered it until he stood directly before me, his body shielding me partially from the council's hungry gaze. "Eulalie," he said, my name a solemn invocation on his lips. "What was done to you was an abomination, but if you hide the evidence, more humans will suffer the same fate. Thaddeus Crone must be brought to justice." The name struck me like a physical blow. Thaddeus Crone, the monster from my nightmares, the owner of the cruel hands and tearing teeth. I had never known his name until this moment, but it fit perfectly into the jagged hole of my memories. "How do you—" "The mark," Cassian interrupted gently. "It speaks to those who know how to read it. Your blood carries his signature, and something else. Something that should be impossible." My fingers trembled as they touched the edge of my scarf. The room had gone completely silent. Even the string quartet had ceased playing. I could feel the weight of ancient gazes pressing upon me, judging, assessing, hungry for revelation. "If I show you," I said, finding strength in desperation, "what happens then? What happens to me?" Cassian's eyes held mine, and for the first time I saw something nakedly honest in their immortal depths. Then you become part of a war that has raged for centuries, a war I did not wish to bring to your doorstep. His hand rose again, hovering near the silk at my throat. May I? The question, the request for permission, undid me. Tears I had forbidden myself to shed for a year burned behind my eyes. I gave a single, tight nod. With infinite gentleness, Cassian's cool fingers brushed against my skin as he slowly unwound the scarf. The silk slithered away, exposing my neck to the cold air and colder gazes of the assembled immortals. A collective hiss rose from the council members. Cassian himself went rigid, his eyes flaring with golden fire as he beheld the full extent of the marking. Impossible, whispered one of the ancient ones. Abomination, hissed another. But Cassian's expression transformed into something I couldn't comprehend, wonder mixed with fury, recognition laced with possessive rage. Not abomination, he said, his voice resonating with power that made the crystal chandeliers tremble above us. Restoration. His fingers hovered over the scars without touching them. The blood royal stolen centuries ago has found its way back. Thaddeus didn't mark her. Cassian turned to face the council, placing himself squarely between them and me. He awakened what was already there. I stared at Cassian, my mind struggling to process his words. The council members' faces had transformed from disgust to something more complex, fear perhaps, or a terrible reverence. The room's temperature seemed to drop further as their ancient gazes fixed on my exposed neck. "What do you mean, blood royal?" I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. Cassian turned back to me, his amber eyes softening just for a moment before hardening again with resolve. "The markings on your neck are not what Thaddeus intended. He believed he was branding you as his property, but instead, his cool fingertips hovered millimeters from my skin, not quite touching. Instead, he activated a dormant bloodline, one that was thought lost to us centuries ago." One of the council members, a woman with silver hair coiled like serpents around her head, stepped forward. "If what you claim is true, Cassian, then the girl must remain under council protection until she remains with me." Cassian cut her off, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "As is her right by ancient law, the blood royal chooses its sanctuary." The woman's mouth thinned to a bloodless line. "The law also states, I know the law better than any of you," Cassian said. I wrote it. The silence that followed was absolute. I felt my heart hammering against my ribs, the only sound in the vast chamber. The scars on my neck seemed to pulse with each beat, as though responding to the tension in the room. "Very well," the silver-haired woman finally conceded. "But the council will convene in 3 days' time to address this development, and Thaddeus must answer for his actions, regardless of their unexpected outcome." Cassian nodded once, then turned to me. "We're leaving." I didn't argue. The weight of the council's stares was becoming unbearable, like physical pressure against my skin. Cassian's hand found the small of my back, guiding me toward the massive doors we'd entered through. The touch was light but unmistakably protective. As we walked, I felt a curious sensation. The immortals in the room were bowing. Not deeply, just slight inclinations of their heads as we passed, their eyes following me with newfound interest. "Don't look at them," Cassian murmured close to my ear. "Don't acknowledge it. Not yet." I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the ornate patterns carved into the doors ahead. My legs felt weak, threatening to buckle with each step. The revelation, whatever it truly meant, hung around me like a cloak too heavy to bear. Outside, The night air hit my face like a blessing. I gulped it down, realizing I'd been holding my breath. Cassian's sleek black car waited, engine purring, the driver standing at attention beside the open rear door. "Take us home," Cassian instructed as he helped me into the vehicle, and informed security to prepare for our arrival. The leather seat embraced me as I sank into it. Cassian slid in beside me, his presence both comforting and overwhelming in the confined space. As the car pulled away from the council chambers, I finally found my voice again. "You need to explain," I said, hating the tremor in my words. "All of it. Now." Cassian's gaze met mine, measuring, calculating. Then something in him seemed to yield. "Yes," he agreed, "but not here. The walls of my home are the only ones I trust completely." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt without my scarf. "How far?" "Not far," he promised. "Less than an hour." The city lights streaked past the tinted windows as we drove. I watched them blur into ribbons of color, trying to anchor myself to something solid and real. The world I'd known was unraveling around me, replaced by something ancient and dangerous and utterly beyond my comprehension. Cassian spoke my name so softly I almost didn't hear it. "I will protect you. Whatever comes next, whatever this means for you, for us, I will keep you safe." I turned to look at him, this immortal king who had crashed into my life less than 24 hours ago. His face was a study in contrasts, the hardness of his jaw against the unexpected gentleness in his eyes, the cold pallor of his skin against the warm amber of his gaze. "Why?" I asked simply. "Why me? Why now?" His lips curved into something not quite a smile. "That," he said, "is what we need to discover together." The rest of the journey passed in silence. I watched as the city gave way to winding roads that climbed into the hills, dense forest pressing in on either side. Finally, wrought iron gates appeared, opening silently as our car approached. Beyond them stretched a long, tree-lined drive, leading to what could only be described as a castle, not the fairy tale kind, but something older, more primal. Stone walls rose against the night sky, windows glowing with warm light. "Welcome to Ravenscroft," Cassian said, as the car came to a stop before massive wooden doors. "My home for the past 4 centuries." I stepped out, tilting my head back to take in the full scope of the structure. The night air here smelled different, cleaner, tinged with pine and something else I couldn't identify. A sense of age, perhaps, of time compressed and preserved in stone. Its words failed me. "Isolated," Cassian supplied. "Defensible, and yours for as long as you need it." The doors opened, revealing a grand entrance hall with a sweeping staircase. A woman stood waiting, her posture perfect, her face ageless in that way I was beginning to recognize. "Vera," Cassian addressed her. "This is Eulalie Vane. She will be staying with us indefinitely. Prepare the East Wing suite." Vera's eyes widened fractionally as they fell on my neck, but her composure never slipped. "Of course, my lord. It's already done." She turned to me with a respectful nod. "Miss Vane, if you'll follow me, I'll show you to your rooms." I hesitated, looking back at Cassian. "You promised explanations, and you'll have them," he assured me. "But first, rest. Clean clothes, food if you want it. I'll come to you in 1 hour." The thought of being alone in this strange place made my chest tighten, but exhaustion was pulling at me, making my thoughts sluggish. I nodded and followed Vera up the staircase, feeling Cassian's eyes on my back, until we turned a corner and he disappeared from view. The East Wing suite was larger than my entire apartment. A sitting room opened into a bedroom dominated by a canopied bed, with a bathroom beyond that contained a tub that could have accommodated 3 people comfortably. Everything spoke of understated luxury: the linens, the furnishings, the subtle scent of lavender that hung in the air. "There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you," Vera informed me. "Lord Cassian had them brought in this morning." This morning, before he'd even met me. The implications of that made my head spin. "Thank you," I managed. Vera paused at the door. "The blood royal has been lost to us for generations," she said, her voice softer than before. Many of us had given up hope. With that cryptic statement, she left, closing the door silently behind her. I stood motionless in the center of the room, feeling like an intruder in a dream. Then practicality asserted itself. I needed a shower, clean clothes, a moment to gather my thoughts before facing Cassian again. The bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and glass. I avoided looking at my reflection as I undressed, not wanting to see the marks on my neck that had caused such a stir. The water pressure was perfect, the temperature exactly right. I stood under the spray until my skin flushed pink, trying to wash away the events of the past day. Wrapped in a plush robe, I ventured to the wardrobe. It was filled with clothes in my size, simple, elegant pieces in fabrics that felt expensive against my fingers. I selected black leggings and an oversized sweater in deep green, grateful for the high neck that covered my scars. A knock came precisely 1 hour after we'd arrived. I opened the door to find Cassian waiting, changed now into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look almost human. Almost. "May I come in?" he asked formally. I stepped aside, gesturing to the sitting area where a tea service had appeared in my absence. Cassian took one of the armchairs, leaving the small sofa for me. I curled into the corner of it, tucking my feet beneath me. "Start at the beginning," I said. "What is the blood royal? What does it have to do with me? And how did Thaddeus know about it when I didn't?" Cassian's fingers tapped a slow rhythm against the arm of his chair. "The beginning?" he echoed. "That would be nearly a millennium ago." He studied my face. "How much do you know about vampire history?" I gave a short, humorless laugh. "Until yesterday I didn't know vampires existed." "Fair enough." He leaned forward slightly. "Then I'll be brief with the history lesson. Vampires have existed alongside humans for thousands of years, but we were never numerous. Our reproduction is difficult, complicated. Most attempts to create new vampires fail." "You mean when you bite people?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "It's more than a bite," Cassian corrected. "It's an exchange of blood, an alchemical process that fails more often than it succeeds. And even when it does succeed, the new vampires are weak, unstable. Many don't survive their first decade." I wrapped my arms around myself. "So what changed?" 800 years ago, a human woman was born with a unique blood composition. When she was turned, something extraordinary happened. Her transition was perfect, and the vampires she created were stronger, more stable than any that had come before. She became known as the Blood Queen, the progenitor of a new lineage. The pieces began to click into place. "And I'm related to her somehow?" Cassian nodded. "The markings on your neck. They're not scars in the traditional sense. They're a manifestation of dormant vampire blood, royal blood, awakening in your veins." I touched my neck reflexively. "But I'm human. I've always been human." "Yes and no." Cassian rose, moving to the window to look out at the night. "The Blood Queen had children before she was turned. Human children who carried her genetic potential. Over centuries that bloodline was diluted, scattered. We thought it lost entirely after the Purge 300 years ago. The Purge, His shoulders tensed. A dark chapter in our history. A faction of vampires led by a power-hungry elder named Marius sought to eliminate the royal bloodline. They feared its power, its potential to shift the balance of our society. He turned back to face me. They hunted down every known descendant of the Blood Queen and destroyed them. A chill ran through me. But they missed some. Apparently so. His amber eyes gleamed in the low light. You. I shook my head, trying to process it all. And Thaddeus, where does he fit into this? Something dangerous flashed across Cassian's face. Thaddeus Crone is one of the oldest living vampires and one of the most twisted. He was part of the faction that supported the purge, though he was too cowardly to participate directly. His voice hardened. He spent centuries collecting rare blood types, experimenting with them. He must have recognized something in your blood when he encountered you. The clinical way he referred to my abduction made my throat tighten. He kept me for weeks, I said, my voice barely audible, draining me, feeding me, just enough to keep me alive. He said my blood was intoxicating. Different. Cassian crossed the room in a blur of movement, kneeling before me. His hands hovered near mine but didn't touch. Eulalie, I cannot undo what he did to you, but I swear on everything I hold sacred, he will never touch you again. The intensity in his eyes should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something unfurl in my chest. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. The mark he left, I said, when he bit me that final time, before I escaped. He said it was a claim, that he'd find me again, no matter where I ran. He intended it as a claim, Cassian agreed. But your blood rejected it. Instead of marking you as his property, it awakened what was dormant in you. The royal blood recognized a threat and defended itself. I frowned. If that's true, why didn't it awaken earlier? He fed on me for weeks. There's a difference between feeding and claiming. A claiming bite is intimate. It involves intent, a psychic component. Cassian's jaw tightened. It's meant to be consensual. The implication hung in the air between us. What Thaddeus had done was the vampire equivalent of sexual assault. My stomach churned. So what happens now? I asked, desperate to move the conversation forward. The council said they're meeting in 3 days. What does that mean for me? Cassian rose, returning to his chair. The Night Council governs vampire society. They adjudicate disputes, enforce our laws, maintain our secrecy. They'll want to verify your bloodline, determine what it means for our kind. And Thaddeus, he'll be summoned to answer for his actions. Forced claiming is a serious crime among our kind. I laughed bitterly. Kidnapping and torture weren't enough. Cassian's expression darkened. Those two, but vampire law and human law are separate systems. What he did to you violated both. I stared into the untouched tea before me, watching the steam curl into the air. And if they confirm what you suspect, that I carry this royal blood, then you'll have choices to make. Cassian's voice softened. But not tonight. Tonight you need rest. As if on cue, exhaustion crashed over me like a wave. The events of the past 24 hours, the confrontation at my apartment, the council chamber, the revelations, all of it pressed down on me with crushing weight. I don't think I can sleep, I admitted. Not with all of this. You can, Cassian said gently. You're safe here. No one enters Ravenscroft without my permission, and I'll be nearby. The thought was oddly comforting. I nodded, suddenly too tired to argue. Cassian rose. I'll leave you to rest. Vera will bring breakfast in the morning, whenever you wake. He was nearly at the door when I called after him. Cassian. He turned, his pale hair catching the lamplight. "Thank you for bringing me here, for explaining." Something complex moved behind his eyes. "Don't thank me yet, Eulalie Vane. This is just the beginning." After he left, I made my way to the bedroom, sinking into the cloud-soft mattress without bothering to change. Despite my fears, sleep claimed me almost instantly, deep and dreamless. I woke to sunlight filtering through heavy curtains. For a disorienting moment, I didn't recognize my surroundings. Then memory flooded back, the council, the revelation, Ravenscroft. I sat up slowly, half expecting to find the previous day had been an elaborate dream. But the unfamiliar bedroom confirmed its reality. A gentle knock at the door preceded Vera's entrance. She carried a tray laden with breakfast foods, pastries, fruit, a carafe of what smelled like excellent coffee. "Good morning, Miss Vane," she greeted me. "I trust you slept well." "Better than I expected," I admitted, running a hand through my tangled hair. "What time is it?" "Just past noon." She set the tray on a small table by the window, then moved to draw back the curtains fully. Sunlight flooded the room, revealing a breathtaking view of forested hills rolling away to distant mountains. "Lord Cassian asked me to inform you that he has business to attend to this morning, but will return by mid-afternoon. In the meantime, you're welcome to explore the grounds or the house. There's a library on the second floor that many guests enjoy." I nodded, trying to process the idea that I was free to wander this massive estate. "Thank you, Vera." She paused at the door. "There's a phone on the desk if you need anything. Just press 0. After she left, I ate ravenously, not realizing how hungry I'd been. The coffee was perfect, strong and smooth. Feeling more human, I showered again and dressed in clothes from the mysteriously well-stocked wardrobe, jeans and a soft blue sweater that fit as if tailored for me. Curiosity drew me out of my rooms and into the corridor beyond. Ravenscroft in daylight was less intimidating, but no less impressive. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating artwork that spanned centuries, Renaissance paintings alongside modern abstracts, ancient artifacts in glass cases beside contemporary sculptures. I found the library easily enough, a 2-story room lined with books from floor to ceiling. Rolling ladders provided access to the highest shelves. The space smelled of leather and paper and wood polish, a comforting scent that reminded me of the university library where I'd spent so many hours as a student. Wandering the stacks, I trailed my fingers along the spines, reading titles in multiple languages. Many were clearly ancient, their leather bindings cracked with age. Others were modern bestsellers. An entire section appeared to be devoted to history, not surprising for someone who had lived through centuries of it. I selected a book at random, a collection of folklore from Eastern Europe, and settled into a window seat overlooking a formal garden. The sun warmed my face as I began to read, losing myself in tales of creatures that walked the night. Some descriptions of vampires were laughably wrong, others uncomfortably accurate. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice Cassian's arrival until his shadow fell across the page. I looked up with a start to find him watching me, his expression unreadable. "Researching the enemy?" he asked, nodding toward the book. "Know thy predator," I countered, closing the volume. "Though according to this, I should be warding you off with garlic and holy water." A smile ghosted across his lips. "Garlic is pungent but hardly fatal. As for holy water, it depends entirely on the faith of the one who blessed it." I set the book aside. "You're back earlier than expected." My business concluded quickly. He gestured to the garden beyond the window. "Would you walk with me?" There are things we should discuss before tomorrow. Tomorrow? The council has moved up their meeting. They'll convene at sunset tomorrow, rather than waiting the full 3 days. My stomach dropped. Why? Word travels fast in our world. The possibility of the Blood Royal's return has caused excitement. I stood, smoothing my hands down my jeans. All right, let's walk. The garden was meticulously maintained, with gravel paths winding between precisely trimmed hedges and late-blooming roses. The air was crisp with approaching autumn, carrying the scent of earth and green things. The council will want to verify your bloodline, Cassian explained as we walked. That will involve a blood test, conducted by their physician. I wrapped my arms around myself. More needles. Wonderful. Cassian's eyes softened with something like sympathy. It will be a small sample, taken with your consent, and in my presence. And if I refuse, that is your right. But it would complicate matters significantly. We reached a stone bench positioned to catch the afternoon sun. I sat, and after a moment's hesitation, Cassian joined me, leaving a careful distance between us. What happens if they confirm it? I asked. This royal blood business. Cassian was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. That depends on you, he finally said. The Blood Royal carries certain privileges in our society. Protection, status, resources. But, his amber eyes met mine. But it also makes you valuable, a target. There are factions within our world who would seek to control you, to use your blood for their own purposes. Like Thaddeus. Yes, though his claim on you is now legally contestable, given what we know. I frowned. What do you mean, claim? I don't belong to anyone. Of course not, Cassian agreed quickly. But vampire law is ancient and complex. Thaddeus marked you, regardless of his intent or your consent, under the oldest interpretations of our law, that creates a bond that must be formally dissolved. Anger flared hot in my chest. That's barbaric. Yes, Cassian said simply. It is, which is why I've spent centuries trying to reform those laws. I studied his face, trying to reconcile the immortal king who commanded the council's respect with the man sitting beside me now, talking of legal reform like some vampire politician. How old are you, really? I asked. The question seemed to surprise him. I was born in 1068, in what is now northern France. I was turned in 1096, on my way to the First Crusade, nearly 1,000 years. The number was too vast to comprehend, and in all that time you never managed to change these laws about claiming. A shadow crossed his face. Change comes slowly to immortals. We are resistant to it, by nature. We sat in silence for a while, the sun warm on our faces. Despite everything, I felt strangely at peace in this moment. The beauty of the garden, the solid presence of Cassian beside me, the temporary reprieve from fear. There is another option, Cassian said eventually, his voice careful. A way to invalidate Thaddeus's claim immediately. I turned to look at him. What? A counterclaim. From someone of higher status in the hierarchy. The implication hung in the air between us. I stared at him, heat rising to my face. You mean you? Cassian held my gaze steadily. It would be ceremonial only, a legal maneuver. Nothing more. No actual blood exchange would be necessary. Just the public declaration that I belong to you instead of him. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Not belonging, Cassian corrected. Protection. There's a difference. I stood abruptly, needing space. And I'm just supposed to trust that you're different, that your protections won't become another cage. Cassian remained seated, his posture deliberately non-threatening. I understand your skepticism. After what Thaddeus did to you, trust doesn't come easily. No, I agreed. It doesn't. I'm not asking for your decision now, he said. Just that you consider it as an option. The council meeting is tomorrow. You have until then to decide. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold, despite the sunshine. And if I choose neither, if I just want to walk away from all of this, Cassian's expression turned grave. Then I would help you disappear. New identity, new location, far from vampire territories. But I can't guarantee your safety. Not completely. Not with what you carry in your blood. The weight of it all pressed down on me. Choices with no good options. Dangers I barely understood. A heritage I'd never asked for. I need time to think, I said. Cassian nodded. Of course. He stood, keeping his distance. There will be a small gathering here tonight. Nothing formal, just a few trusted associates I've called to help prepare for tomorrow's council meeting. You're welcome to join us, or to have dinner privately in your rooms. The thought of meeting more vampires made my stomach clench. I think I'll stay in my rooms, as you wish. He hesitated, then added, Eulalie, whatever you decide, know that my priority is your safety, not the politics, not the bloodline. You. I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But the scars on my neck throbbed with phantom pain, a reminder of the last immortal who had shown interest in me. I'll see you tomorrow then, I said, turning back toward the house. Tomorrow, he agreed, his voice following me down the path. I spent the rest of the day in a fog of anxiety, alternating between pacing my rooms and staring out the windows at the darkening sky. Vera brought dinner, a perfectly cooked steak, roasted vegetables, a glass of red wine, but I barely tasted it. From somewhere below came the sounds of the gathering. Cassian had mentioned. Voices, music, the occasional burst of laughter. It was strange to think of vampires socializing like this, so normally. As night deepened, restlessness drove me to the balcony adjoining my bedroom. The air was cool, scented with pine and wood smoke. Below, light spilled from the windows of what must have been a ballroom. Through the glass, I could see figures moving, some dancing to music I could barely hear. I leaned against the stone balustrade, watching. Despite everything, curiosity tugged at me. These were Cassian's trusted allies, the ones he'd called to help protect me. Perhaps I should at least see them. Before I could talk myself out of it, I changed into a simple black dress from the wardrobe and made my way downstairs. The music grew louder as I approached the ballroom. Something classical played on what sounded like a live piano. I paused in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. The room was filled with perhaps 30 people, all impossibly beautiful, all moving with that fluid grace I was beginning to recognize as inhuman. They were dressed elegantly but not formally, the men in suits without ties, the women in cocktail dresses that managed to look both timeless and modern. Before I could retreat, Cassian appeared at my side, as if conjured by my thoughts. He wore black-on-black trousers and a shirt open at the throat, his platinum hair loose around his shoulders. "You decided to join us after all," he said, his voice warm with what seemed like genuine pleasure. "I got curious," I admitted. "These are all vampires?" He nodded. "Friends, allies, some have served me for centuries." I scanned the room, taking in the elegant gathering. They looked so normal. What were you expecting? Capes and coffins. There was a hint of amusement in his voice. Maybe a little more Dracula, a little less cocktail party, I conceded. His lips curved into a smile. "Would you like a drink?" I nodded, suddenly aware of how dry my throat was. Cassian signaled to a server, who appeared instantly with 2 glasses of red wine. I accepted one gratefully, taking a sip. It was excellent, rich and complex. "Come," Cassian said. "There are people I'd like you to meet." He guided me into the room, his hand hovering near the small of my back without quite touching me. Conversations paused as we passed, eyes following our progress with undisguised curiosity. We stopped before a striking woman with copper-colored hair and eyes so dark they appeared black. "Eulalie, this is Lysandra. She's my head of security and one of my oldest friends." Lysandra inclined her head respectfully. "Miss Vane, it's an honor. Lysandra will be coordinating your protection detail for the council meeting tomorrow," Cassian explained. I blinked. "I have a protection detail." "You do now," Lysandra confirmed, her voice carrying a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "My team is the best. Nothing will happen to you while you're under our watch." Before I could respond, the music changed, shifting to something slower, more intimate. Couples moved to the center of the room, beginning to dance. "Would you excuse us, Lysandra?" Cassian said. "I believe this is our dance." Lysandra smiled knowingly and melted back into the crowd. Cassian turned to me, one eyebrow raised in question. "I don't dance," I protested weakly. "Everyone dances," he countered. "Some just need the right partner." He held out his hand, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. I hesitated, then placed my fingers in his. His skin was cool but not cold, firm and smooth against mine. Cassian led me to the edge of the dance floor, then turned to face me. His hand settled at my waist, light as a butterfly, while the other held mine aloft. "Just follow my lead," he murmured. And somehow I did. We moved together as if we'd danced 1,000 times before, his subtle guidance making it effortless. The room seemed to fade around us, the other dancers becoming mere shadows at the periphery of my awareness. "Everyone's watching us," I whispered, feeling the weight of their stares. "Let them watch," Cassian replied, his amber eyes holding mine. "They're seeing the return of something long lost to our kind. Hope." The intensity of his gaze made my heart stutter. "I'm not a symbol, Cassian. I'm just a woman who got caught up in something I don't understand." His hand tightened fractionally at my waist. "You're far more than that, Eulalie Vane. You always have been." The certainty in his voice was unsettling. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." The music swelled around us as he guided me through a turn. "I know you survived what would have broken most humans. I know you rebuilt your life after Thaddeus, alone and afraid but determined. I know you face the unknown with courage, even now." His words struck something deep within me, a recognition that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I looked away, unwilling to let him see how deeply he'd affected me. The music ended, and Cassian stepped back, releasing me. The absence of his touch left me strangely bereft. "Thank you for the dance," he said formally. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Around us the party continued, but something had shifted in the atmosphere, a tension, an awareness that hummed between us like a plucked string. Before either of us could speak again, a commotion at the entrance to the ballroom drew our attention. A young vampire, barely more than a boy in appearance, burst into the room, his face tight with urgency. He made straight for Cassian, bowing hastily. "My lord," he said, breathless, despite not needing air. "There's a situation at the gates. A delegation from the council, led by Thaddeus Crone. They're demanding entry." The room went silent, all pretense of normalcy evaporating. Cassian's expression hardened to stone, his eyes flaring with golden fire. On what grounds? He demanded. They carry a warrant from the council, the messenger reported, for the immediate transfer of Eulalie Vane to neutral territory, pending tomorrow's hearing. I felt the blood drain from my face, my legs suddenly weak beneath me. Impossible, Cassian said, his voice deadly quiet. The council agreed she would remain under my protection until the formal hearing. Thaddeus claims new evidence of immediate danger to the subject. The messenger continued. The warrant bears 3 council seals. Lysandra appeared at Cassian's side. The gates are sealed. They cannot enter without your permission, regardless of their warrant. Cassian's jaw worked as he considered his options. How many? Thaddeus and 5 others. All armed. I found my voice at last. What happens if you refuse them entry? Cassian turned to me, his expression grave. It could be interpreted as defiance of the council's authority, a serious offense. And if you let them in? His eyes held mine, fierce with protective rage. They will try to take you, and I will have to kill them all. My heart hammered against my ribs as the room's tension pressed in from all sides. The air between Cassian and me seemed to vibrate with unspoken decisions, calculations, and risks. Let them in, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Cassian's head snapped toward me, his amber eyes wide with disbelief. Eulalie, no. If you defy the council now, everything we've worked for is lost. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice. We need them to see me, to witness what he did. His jaw clenched so tightly, I could see the muscle twitching beneath his skin. If Thaddeus touches you, he won't, I said, though my stomach twisted at the thought. Not with witnesses present. He wants legitimacy too badly. Lysandra moved to Cassian's side. My lord, if I may. The lady has a point. Defiance now would give Thaddeus exactly what he wants, grounds to turn the council against you. Cassian's eyes never left mine, searching for any flicker of doubt. I held his gaze, willing him to trust me, despite the fear I couldn't quite hide. Very well, he finally said, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Escort them to the receiving hall. Full protocol. And Lysandra, his eyes darkened to molten gold. Double the guard. Position our strongest at every exit. As the messenger hurried away, Cassian took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. Stay beside me. Not one step away. I nodded, grateful for his solid presence, as we moved through the corridors. The other vampires fell into formation around us, a protective phalanx gliding silently across the marble floors. The receiving hall was cavernous, with vaulted ceilings and ancient tapestries depicting vampire history. Cassian led me to an elevated dais where 2 ornate chairs stood side by side. He didn't sit, and neither did I. The massive doors swung open. 6 figures entered, moving with that unnatural grace all vampires possessed. At their center walked Thaddeus Crone, his silver-streaked dark hair pulled back severely, his thin lips curved in what might have passed for a polite smile, if not for the predatory gleam in his eyes. King Cassian, he said, offering a bow that managed to be both correct and somehow insulting. The Night Council thanks you for your cooperation. I wasn't aware the council made a habit of changing agreed-upon terms without consultation. Cassian replied, his tone deceptively mild. Thaddeus's smile didn't falter. Circumstances change. New evidence emerges. His eyes slid to me, and I fought the urge to shrink back. The human appears well enough. Surprising, given what we've learned of her fragility. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. Cassian's energy beside me flared hot with barely contained rage. Present your warrant, Cassian demanded. One of Thaddeus's companions stepped forward, unrolling an ancient-looking parchment bearing 3 blood-red wax seals. Lysandra intercepted it, scanning the document before passing it to Cassian. The Council requests immediate transfer of the human witness to neutral territory, Thaddeus announced, loud enough for all to hear, for her protection and to ensure an unbiased testimony. Cassian's laugh held no humor. From whom, Thaddeus? The only threat to Eulalie Vane stands before me. Thaddeus spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. Serious allegations have been made against you, my king. The Council merely seeks to ensure the witness isn't influenced. And who made these allegations? I asked, stepping forward despite Cassian's warning hand on my arm. Thaddeus's eyes narrowed at my boldness. That is Council business, human. It's my business if it concerns me, I countered, my voice stronger than I felt. Or is the accused not permitted to face their accuser in vampire justice? A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. I'd struck a nerve. Vampire law was ancient and rigid about such matters. The hearing is tomorrow, Thaddeus said, his voice hardening. All will be revealed then. For now we have orders to escort you to the neutral territory of the Temple of Shadows. Cassian's hand tightened on the warrant, the parchment crinkling. This document gives you the right to request her transfer. It does not compel me to comply if I believe she is in danger. Defying a council warrant is a serious offense, Your Majesty, Thaddeus warned, his eyes glittering with anticipation. As is falsifying evidence to obtain one, Cassian countered. The tension in the room crackled like lightning before a storm. I could feel the gathering power as vampires on both sides prepared for potential conflict. There is another option, I said, my mind racing. The hearing is tomorrow at midnight. Yes? Thaddeus nodded stiffly. Then move it forward. Now, tonight. I looked around the room. 3 council members' seals are on that warrant. Summon them here. Let's have this hearing immediately, with all parties present. Thaddeus's composure slipped for just a moment, revealing a flash of alarm. The council chambers are prepared for. The law doesn't specify location, Cassian interrupted, understanding my strategy immediately. Only that council members be present and witnesses protected. I'm not leaving with you, Thaddeus, I said firmly. Either we have the hearing now, or we have it as originally scheduled, with me remaining under King Cassian's protection. Thaddeus's jaw worked as he calculated his options. Finally he gave a curt nod. Very well. I will contact the council members. But know this, his eyes locked with mine, truth will out tonight, one way or another. As he and his entourage withdrew to make arrangements, Cassian pulled me aside, his voice low and urgent. Eulalie, are you certain about this? Once the council convenes, I cannot interfere with their proceedings. I nodded, though my hands trembled. It's our best chance. Thaddeus was too eager to get me alone. Whatever he's planning, it won't work with the full council present. His fingers brushed my cheek. You continue to astonish me with your courage. It's not courage, I whispered. It's survival. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The great hall was transformed into a makeshift council chamber. 3 ancient vampires arrived, their faces impassive masks of authority, as they took their seats at a hastily arranged tribunal table. The eldest, a female vampire with silver hair and eyes like black opals, sat at the center. I am Elara, she announced, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. First seat of the Night Council. With me are Valerian and Mordecai, second and third seats. She looked around the room, her gaze lingering on Cassian, then me, then Thaddeus. This emergency session is highly irregular. But given the gravity of the allegations, we have agreed to proceed. Thaddeus stepped forward, bowing deeply. The council's wisdom is appreciated. I come before you with evidence of King Cassian's violation of our most sacred laws, harboring a human who has witnessed our existence, manipulating her memories, and interfering with my rightful claim to justice for my progeny's death. Elara's expression remained unreadable. Serious charges indeed. She turned to Cassian. Your response, King Cassian. Cassian stood tall, his platinum hair gleaming in the candlelight. The charges are false. I have followed our laws to the letter. The human Eulalie Vane was attacked by Thaddeus's progeny, Marcus. I intervened to prevent her death, as is my right and duty as king. She has been under my protection while the council was notified and a proper hearing arranged. And the memory manipulation, Valerian asked, his voice like gravel. I have altered no memories, Cassian stated firmly. Eulalie Vane remembers everything that happened to her. Impossible. No human could witness what she saw and remain sane without intervention. Perhaps, I said, stepping forward despite the warning looks from all sides, you should ask me directly. The council members regarded me with varying degrees of surprise and curiosity. Humans rarely address the council. Very well, Elara said after a moment. Eulalie Vane approached the council. I moved forward on legs that felt like water, acutely aware of Cassian's concerned gaze following me. The center of the room felt exposed, vulnerable. I stood alone before three of the oldest creatures on Earth, their combined power pressing against my skin like static electricity. Tell us what you remember of the night in question, Elara commanded. I took a deep breath. I was walking home from my night shift at the hospital. A man, Marcus, followed me. He attacked me in the alley near my apartment. My voice wavered slightly. He wasn't human. His eyes changed. His teeth. He bit me. My hand unconsciously rose to my neck where the scars remained. And then? Mordecai prompted, leaning forward with interest. Cassian appeared. He pulled Marcus off me. There was a fight. Marcus died. I swallowed hard. I was already losing consciousness from blood loss. But I saw everything. Cassian could have left me to die, or killed me to keep your secret. Instead, he saved my life. Thaddeus stepped forward, his face a mask of righteous indignation. A convenient story, but Marcus was my progeny. I felt his death. He was not hunting, he was investigating suspicious activity on our territory. King Cassian killed him to prevent discovery of his own violations. You lie, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Thaddeus's eyes flashed dangerously. Watch your tongue, human. Marcus told me everything while he attacked me. I continued, ignoring his threat. He boasted about how many humans he'd killed, how his master, you taught him to hunt without leaving evidence. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Thaddeus's face contorted with rage. Preposterous. The human has been coached. This is exactly the manipulation I warned of. There is a simple way to determine truth here, Elara said, raising a hand for silence. Her black opal eyes fixed on me. Human, are you willing to submit to a blood reading? Cassian stepped forward, alarm clear on his face. Blood reading is dangerous for humans. It could kill her. It is her choice, Elara said implacably. Truth or death, as has always been our way. All eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down, stealing my breath. What is a blood reading? I asked, my mouth dry. We will taste your blood, Mordecai explained, his ancient eyes watching me carefully. In doing so, we can see your memories, feel your emotions as they were in the moment. There can be no lies in blood. And it might kill me, I added. Yes, he acknowledged without emotion. Human minds are fragile. The intrusion of 3 ancient consciousnesses may be too much for you to bear. I looked at Cassian, saw the fear in his eyes. Then I turned to Thaddeus, who watched with barely concealed anticipation, whether for my death or my failure. I couldn't tell. I'll do it, I said. Eulalie. No, Cassian started. I have to. I cut him off. It's the only way. Elara nodded solemnly. Approach, human. I walked to the tribunal table, my heart thundering in my chest. The 3 council members rose, moving around to stand before me. Bare your neck, Valerian instructed. With trembling fingers, I unwound the silk scarf I'd worn to hide the worst of my scars. Gasps echoed through the hall as the full extent of my injuries became visible, not just the bite marks from Marcus, but the deliberate ritualistic scars that had been inflicted later. What is this? Elara demanded, her composure slipping for the first time. Before I could answer, Cassian was beside me, his face a mask of horror as he gently turned my head, examining the marks I'd kept hidden from him. Who did this to you? He asked, his voice breaking. I met his eyes, then turned to face Thaddeus. He did. After Marcus died, he came to my apartment. He tortured me for information about you. When I wouldn't give him what he wanted, he did this. I gestured to the brands and cuts that formed ancient vampire symbols across my skin. Thaddeus's face contorted with fury. More lies. I never touched the human. Blood will tell, Elara said, her voice cold as winter. Proceed. The 3 council members surrounded me. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. 3 sets of fangs pierced my skin simultaneously, my wrists and my neck. The pain was sharp but brief, quickly replaced by a floating sensation as my consciousness seemed to expand. I felt them moving through my memories. Marcus's attack, Cassian's rescue, my recovery in his home. Then came the night terrors. Thaddeus breaking into my apartment, the hours of torture, the ritual cutting, as he demanded information about Cassian, threatened my family, promised endless suffering. The memories flowed like a river, carrying us all through the current of truth. When the council members finally withdrew, I collapsed, caught in Cassian's waiting arms. The hall was deathly silent. Elara, Valerian, and Mordecai stood rigid, their ancient faces transformed by something I'd never expected to see, raw emotion. Thaddeus groaned. Elara's voice rang out, terrible in its quiet fury. You stand convicted of torture of a human witness, falsification of council documents, conspiracy against your king, and violation of the sacred accords. Thaddeus backed away, his eyes darting toward the exits where guards stood ready. You cannot. Silence. Mordecai thundered. Your blood guilt is absolute. The sentence is final death, Valerian pronounced. To be carried out immediately. Thaddeus lunged for the nearest exit, but never made it 3 steps. Cassian moved with blinding speed, catching him by the throat and slamming him to the floor. For what you did to her, Cassian growled, his face transformed by rage. I would tear you apart piece by piece over centuries. Thaddeus struggled, his fangs bared. She's just a human, a nothing. She is everything, Cassian replied. He looked up at the council. With your permission? Elara nodded once. What happened next was too fast for human eyes to follow completely. Cassian's movements were a blur of lethal precision. There was a terrible high-pitched sound, not quite a scream, and then Thaddeus Crone was no more, his body crumbling to ash on the marble floor. The hall remained silent as Cassian returned to my side, gathering me gently into his arms. The council recognizes the right of protection claimed by King Cassian Rosa over the human Eulalie Vane, Ilara announced formally. Further, we grant her the status of knowing human, with all rights and privileges thereof. What does that mean? I whispered to Cassian as the council began to disperse. It means you're under my protection officially now, he murmured, his lips close to my ear. No vampire may harm you without facing the council's wrath as well as mine. And what does that mean for us? I asked, suddenly unsure. He drew back slightly, his amber eyes searching mine. It means whatever you want it to mean, Eulalie. I have lived for centuries, but never have I met anyone like you. Your courage, your resilience. His fingers gently traced the edge of one of my scars. I would spend eternity helping you heal, if you'd allow it. And if I wanted more than healing, I asked, my heart in my throat. The corner of his mouth lifted in a tentative smile. Then I would give you everything I am, for as long as you would have me. In the aftermath, as the great hall emptied and the night deepened toward dawn, Cassian carried me to his private chambers. He tended to the punctures from the blood reading with gentle hands, his touch reverent against my scarred skin. I should have protected you better, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I never imagined he would come for you directly. You couldn't have known, I said, catching his hand in mine. None of this is your fault. He brought my palm to his lips. Will you stay? Not just tonight, but after you've healed, after you've had time to think. I looked at this ancient, powerful being who knelt before me with such vulnerability in his eyes. The night had stripped away all pretense between us. I had seen the darkness in him, the lethal fury, the capacity for violence. But I had also seen his honor, his tenderness, his unwavering protection. Yes, I whispered. I'll stay. Outside, the first hint of dawn crept across the sky. Cassian moved to draw the heavy curtains, but I stopped him. Wait, I said. Just for a moment. We stood together at the window, his arms around me from behind, watching as the darkness gave way to light. The rising sun caught in his platinum hair, turning it to spun gold against my dark locks. Our reflection in the glass showed two figures, one human, one vampire, both transformed by the night's events. A new day, he murmured against my hair. A new beginning, I agreed, turning in his arms to face the future that awaited us both.